I'm Tyler McDonald.
Hi, I'm Logan.
I'm Jackson.
I'm Michael Garrett.
Jamari Smith, aka J Money.
And our topic is racism. Jackson, can you tell us about racism in the U.S.?
There was a poll taken about racism, and overall, 64% of people said racism remains a major problem in our society, and 30% agreed that racism exists today, but it's not a major problem.
Thank you, Jackson.
Michael, what can you tell us about racism in the U.S.?
51% of Americans now hold racial prejudices against blacks, and it went up 3% since 2008, the poll finds. Jamari, are police racist?
Black people accounted for 31% of police killing victims in 2012, even though they made up just 13% of the U.S. population. Although this data is incomplete because it's based on voluntary reports from police around the country, it highlights the vast disparity of police use force.
Jamari, can you please tell us about the racism in Iowa?
Oh my God. The state arrest police at a rate of 8 times higher than the whites for marijuana possession, despite the rate of drugs usage between the blacks and whites being about the same. 4 years, Iowa also held the title for locking up black people at the higher rate than other states. In fact, its black population is only about 3%, adding insult to injury, and poverty rate among African Americans in Iowa is 31%, compared with 11% from white loners.
Thank you, J Money. Logan, why do people kneel?
People kneel in the NFL and during the national anthem to protest police brutality and racial inequality in the United States.
Can you tell us about racism cases at Hempstead High School?
Well, we met with some Hempstead office workers, and there was 0 referrals for anything of racial.
Jackson, can you tell us how racism has changed over the years?
People say that racism has gotten much better over the years. A poll taken in 1958 showed that 44% of whites said they would move if a black family became their next-door neighbor. Today, it says only 1%, and it also says that in 1964, only 18% of whites claimed to have a friend who is black. Today, 86% say they do.
Well, that's an interesting stat there, Jackson. Can you tell us about the pay difference?
Blacks in 2015 earned just as much, or 75 as much as whites for hourly wages, and women's earn 83% as much as men.
Okay, Tyler, can you tell us is racism getting worse?
In my opinion, I believe that racism is getting better. Companies and schools are getting more diverse. So are cities.
And can you tell us about the discrimination of housing?
Discrimination of housing is which an individual or family is treated unequally when trying to buy, rent, lease, sell, or finance a home based on certain characteristics such as race. People have done studies over this topic, and this has gotten so bad that the government even made a law called the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act protects people from discrimination when they are renting, buying, or securing financing for any housing.
Are court systems favoring whites?
Over the years, critics of the criminal justice system have cited many cases and studies. For example, statistical studies suggest that more than half of all black males in large cities can be expected to be arrested at least once during their lifetime, while only 14% of whites will. And African Americans, they only make up 12% of the U.S. population, but they are 45% of all prison inmates and 40% of those sentenced to death. In 1992, there were more black men in prison than in college. Even more startling, a quarter of all African Americans, males age 20 to 29, are locked up or on probation or on parole right now.
What about the punishments for racism?
Those found guilty of common assault can face up to 6 months, but if they're convicted of racially aggravated assault, it can be 2 years. And if you shout something racist, it can be up to 7 years in prison. Jamari, can you tell us how racism shows up in everyday life?
Racism shows up in my every other day, such as being accused of taking something to walking in the parking lot and people start locking their cars.
Very, very sad. Tyler, can you teach us how we can act to not be racist?
We can take seriously the smallest hint of hate, even what appears to be a simple name calling. The Department of Justice again has a warning. Slurs often escalate to harassment to threats, and threats to physical violence. Don't wait to fight hate. If you're a victim, report every incident in detail and ask for help. If you learn about a hate crime victim in your community, show support. Let victims know you care.
Logan, how can we end racism?
Well, we can start easily and not laugh at racist jokes or make assumptions, or make an effort to get to know different people, learn about other people's culture, think before you speak, be a role model, be vocal in opposing description of views and practices, and especially with friends and family who respect your opinion. Don't make assumptions, and just know everybody's equal, and don't assume that African Americans like rap music or that Asians are smart with good or math, or and stereotypes hurt everybody. So don't use stereotypes, and then racism will be over in no time.
Thank you for listening. We hope you learned a lot on how to stop racism and how it affects people's everyday lives.